Welcome to the Decentralized Consciousness podcast. I'm here today with Jerry Katz. Welcome, Jerry.
Hi, Sama. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I found you through Citadel 21, the Bitcoin magazine, where you wrote about non-duality and Bitcoin a couple of years ago now. So that was really refreshing to hear some non-dualistic perspectives on Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, Citadel 21 was very kind to publish my article because, look, non-duality and Bitcoin, they do have some resonance. And people have looked at Bitcoin from a spiritual point of view.
Yeah.
And non-duality, when we talk about non-duality, there's one aspect. It's paradoxical to say there's two aspects to non-duality because non-duality means not two. But that's really, paradox really is probably the hallmark of pursuing this understanding of non-duality. You're going to find paradox from beginning to end. And sometimes I think that the definition of a happy life is being comfortable with paradox and even enjoying it. So that's an important part. I mentioned in that article on Citadel that we live the paradox. Because the paradox is that reality itself has no center. It's decentralized, and yet we live as though there are centers everywhere, right? There's a center to what we're doing here. There's a center to communities and families and any type of online group we belong to. And we need that. We need those centers because they're functional. So we don't want to be trapped and kind of limited in a world of concepts, but we have to function with them. Yet it's important to live beyond that, and to realize the nature of reality. And so when we do both those things, realize that reality has no center, and at the same time we function and live with groups and circumstances that have a center, that's called living the paradox. And we don't want to get lost in one or the other. We don't want our life to become totally living in the absolute, where we can't function in our lives or society. And we don't want to be lost in the everyday hockey game in the head, of society and anxiety. So we want both. We want to live the paradox. And Bitcoin is like that. So, but maybe we'll get more into that. I think maybe we can talk about non-duality and then see how it applies to Bitcoin. Bitcoin does have its paradox. Does it exist? What is it? What is it concretely? And yet we act as if it is a real thing. It is a real thing. But in some sense, its existence is nebulous. So it's both. And again, that's paradoxical.
Yeah, we will dive into all of that soon. But first, I would like to hear you talk about your life a little bit so we can get to know you, your physical avatar.
Yeah, I've always been interested in awareness and in consciousness and in what's real and what this world is. And I would say that started really around the age of around 3 or 4. And the experience was that I was with my family and we were in Washington, D.C. And suddenly I was sitting on a small ledge, small curb or stoop, and there was in front of a building, a major building, and there was a fountain in front of it. So I was sitting right along this fountain. Now, what happened was that I woke up to that experience. I just saw myself having this experience of watching the water in the fountain. Now, there were colored lights on the fountain, and one was red and one was blue. And so between the red light and the blue light and the white water in between, you had the red, white, and blue, appropriate for Washington, D.C. But I remember having that experience and thinking, and I'm only 3 or 4, I don't know what I was, but I verbalized the words, "This is my first experience." It's like I knew I was having an experience and that it was my first experience. And then the other part of that was that I uttered, "I'll remember this forever." And that was, I mean, I was organically and naturally just interested in experience itself and the fact that it was some entity, whether you call it me or whatever it was aware of that at that age. It really made me think that whatever entity knew that, it might have come from somewhere else. You know, people talk about rebirth and past lives. I really wonder if that entity was some past life that entered into my body and had that experience and said, "Hey, okay, I'm back. This is my first experience. I'm here. You know, we're going. This is the show." So, into this very second, as I speak, I'm not sure if who was speaking is that guy or person that had that experience back in Washington, D.C., or whether it's you know, this guy Jerry that was born or that's in his body. I don't really know who was speaking. Could be both of us. I honestly don't know. But that entity within this body then had other experiences, so that what I just described happened around age 3 or 4, and the starting around age 10, between age 10 and 12, I had several initiations into the I am, what I call the I am. This happened with visitations by beings that, I don't know, years later, I recognized them as various different sages, non-dual sages and gurus. At the time, I didn't know who or what they were. I was just scared. You know, 10 years old, and people walk into your room and then they uttered a mantra several times. And the mantra was frightening. It was very thunderous. Again, at the time, I didn't know anything about mantras or anything. And these visitations happened 3 times. And it being later years, I realized what was happening. So I can talk more about it, but there are other initiations that finally led to an interest in non-duality, including an initiation into the word non-duality. But I'll stop here. If you have any comments, anything that parallels your own experience or anything, somehow, I'll give you a chance to say something, give me a break.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What you say awakened many things in me, a lot of assumptions and lots of stories that I've held on to in periods of my life, but that I hold very, very loosely now. So having other people talk through you, I have a lot of experience with this. And what you said about the mantras being powerful and thunderous also awakened memories in me where people from higher consciousness or talk sometimes, it feels like a thunder
Mm.
because it's just so powerful. It's like beyond the scope of what we are used to. It's like one word is it's like they are talking at root level, so we have all these distortion trees. So we have a problem when we are young, and then that problem sort of keeps repeating, and we just add layers and layers and layers. So the root structure, I find that these non-dualistic beings, sometimes they talk on this root structure. So they say things like, how are you? And it feels like my whole being is almost exploding because they're just talking to that deep part of myself that I haven't seen for a long time. It's been buried. And it's just some of the experiences that were triggered when you were talking. But please continue. Please give us more details. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I enjoyed hearing what you said, and I agree, and I'm glad to hear that you've experienced that kind of thunder, in a way that's almost the definition of the guru, is that they are literally that thunder. Some people serve that function, and I do agree that what we have are stories here, memories, and they are what they are. They're kind of like business cards in a way, calling cards, and they could be, they're interesting. They could be helpful to someone, and but they are stories, and part of the stories that they have, it's part of this story I'm telling is that the stories have all dissolved. They're just something to be used to, connect with people or have a conversation. They may not be worth much more than that. But so I had these three visitations, and I think one of the more powerful ones that happened around age 12 was not a visitation, but an out of the body experience. And in this out of the body experience, I was laying in bed, and I left my body, and I could see my body laying there breathing. So that wasn't so much an initiation or a thunderous event. But what was when I turned away from myself and looked in the opposite direction, I was in a starry sky. It was just a sky full of stars. And I focused on one, and that star opened up and pulled me in. That star I recognized as that mantra that was spoken to me. It was another I am initiation. And I don't know if I mentioned the word initiation earlier, but an initiation, you described it when you said that something thunderous penetrate. I'm paraphrasing, I'm not using your words, but it kind of, enters into you and changes you on a very deep level. Um, on a root level, I think you used the term root. And so an initiation is what I think affects you at that root level, even changes your perception, and even cellularly, you can feel your body changing. Even that's a real initiation, and you can compare that to something like an insight. We get insights all the time. Insights aren't necessarily thunderous and change you, um, or aha moments. People talk of aha moments. They're kind of like insights, and they're good to have. They can be important, but they're not initiations. So we're talking about something very, again, to repeat our words, thunderous, radical. Radical comes from the word root. So we can say they're radical, they're thunderous, they're almost guru-like. And I felt I had those initiations into the I am. And then, from the age of 12 or so, life just went on. I had no interest in pursuing them, pursuing what I experienced. I didn't really realize what I experienced until I was in my 20s. And then I was able to just pursue spirituality in all the ways that people pursue them. But it wasn't until around 1980 that I stumbled onto the word non-duality. And when I heard that word, that was another initiation. that word just entered into me, and I had to pursue it. So from around 1980, for years and decades, I just pursued non-duality and tried to understand it. Non-dualities was hard to understand in those days because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have friends that were into non-duality. People didn't even know the word. So somehow I came to be familiar with non-duality, the experience of it, and I started a group online. Again, it started in 97, but the first group was in 98. People didn't know the word non-duality, but eventually people have come to non-duality has become somewhat mainstream in spirituality at this point. Anyway, those are some highlights of my so-called spiritual life. Now, this entire I am, we talk about story, holding it lightly. Well, I lived in this I am kind of sense of being until somewhere in my 40s, and it just dissolved. It was just wasn't there anymore. There was no even now I can't really speak of an I am. I can relate stories as I've done, but I don't have that experience. So that's gone. So now, while I was in that kind of mode of I amness, I had a kind of a expression that went along with it, and the expression was, "There is only one day." That was my perception of life in this I amness type of state. Now, once the I am dissolved, it was instead of "there is only one day," the obvious utterance was, "There is only this." So this being more intimate, more close, less less dimensional, really non-dimensional than one day. So the one day is kind of conceptual, and thisness or this is more non-conceptual. And I think at that point, you're kind of experiencing the non-dual nature of reality, and yet your life goes on, and still always still learning and seeking new ways of how things are expressed, and it's just ongoing. And then you stumble into Bitcoin, and you realize there are resonances between Bitcoin and non-duality, and that's what I wrote about in Citadel 21, excellent magazine. That's kind of the story up to this point. I'm trying to figure out the connections between non-duality and Bitcoin, and they certainly exist.
Okay, I see. So you experienced non-duality firsthand in that period of your life, and then now you're experiencing yourself as a separate being, and you have memories and stories from that time, and you're still interested in the topic. That must be an interesting position, because memories are almost like portals. You can relive memories, so you can remember how it was, and then you have a physical reality where you're experiencing something different. And maybe that's the point. Maybe you came here that you wanted to experience yourself as a separate being. Any thoughts about that?
Well, the idea of a separate being, I mean, there's no separation. I mean, the nature of everything is non-dual, so it means there's not two. It also means there's not one. So you have to get your head around, not only is there not two, there really isn't even one. So there isn't even the absence of the one, and yet, you have to live your life as though, with an ego, and an ego simply means boundaries. So yeah, you have to live like that. But are we actually separate? Well, then, you look at some of the metaphors of, for example, the ocean and the wave, and the wave arises. It's highly individualistic. I mean, no two waves could possibly be the same. And yet they're not separate from the greater reality. So again, when we're trying to understand non-duality, the hallmark is paradox. So anything any kind of label that's put on anything can't be conclusive, it can't be final, it can't be the truth, because there's always another side that's consumes whatever your position is, whatever is concluded. The greater reality has already consumed it even before it was ever uttered. So the separate life is apparent. We appear to have a separate life, yeah, for sure. But I wouldn't say that that's the true condition. I couldn't say that. But yeah, life certainly appears to be be that way.
So for me, it has been a journey of attempting to embody non-dualism in the way that in the lower consciousness, then we see ourselves as separate. And that's why we need to do things to get things. So we need to work to get money, for example. But like the New Age movement is saying that when we are able to embody the highest self, or the node on the creation network, as I say in Bitcoin terms. So I see each soul as a node. And we can be a closed node, or we can be a shut down node. And that's when we are living in separation. So we think that everything is separate from us. And when we think it's separate, we believe in lack. We believe in scarcity. So if we believe in scarcity, we think we need to do things to get things. But as an active node on the network, we are able to embody the attributes of non-dualism, where if we know that the energies of money, for example, is part of us, and if we hone that relationship, then the physical reality have to present that relationship according to the blueprint. So as long as we think we're separate from money, then the physical reality is representing a separation and scarcity and lack. But when we come to the understanding that we are one with money, then there is no lack. And then the physical reality have to represent this. It's just a mirror, as above, so below.
Yeah, I mean, that really states it, beautifully. I mean, if I can paraphrase what you're saying, according to my understanding, typically most people believe that they're separate. They believe that they're not connected with other people and with ideas and, the flow of the economy and the flow of monetary energy. If they believe that they're separate, if you believe you're separate from that, yeah, you're going to be coming more from scarcity and lack. And that's not the optimal way to live life. I mean, non-duality, one of the great, again, another hallmark is interconnection. Everything is connected. Nothing is divided. Nothing is separate. Although they appear as separate entities, they're not. Nothing is separate. Everything is connected. And again, when you talk about nodes, I mean, the Bitcoin infrastructure is interconnected, and the people involved with it, committed to it, people using it, are all interconnected. And that's why we talk about a Bitcoin community, and the loyalty. And I can use the word thunder there, the thunderous support of Bitcoin. It comes from people who think it's not just a good idea, but that it resonates with that thunderous initiation, that they've had into the nature of reality. And this is why Bitcoin is, I mean, sure, there are people just investing and buying and selling, making money, but it goes much deeper than that. And that's what I really want to explore through non-duality. And it's what you've expressed. You've described this, how people can live in separation. but that there's a way of living that's understands and realizes and is part of a very vast and deep interconnection. And you can tap into that just consciously, just be aware of it. And then you can build on it, through practices such as mindfulness and meditation, and just study of some of the sages and the ancient scriptures, ancient non-dual scriptures from Hinduism and Buddhism and every other religion really has non-dual writings. So, this is a way to improve someone's monetary well-being. Their financial well-being is to pursue non-duality in some way. And you don't have to call it non-duality if it's some new age thinking, if it's some, there are some very good law of attraction people out there that are very non-dual in the way they talk. So if someone is suffering a little from some financial circumstances, you got to do the practical things, like maybe, stop buying Starbucks coffee. You got to do the practical things, but you also can do the higher consciousness steps. And in fact, you really need to, because that's why we're here. We're here to understand the nature of reality as deeply and profoundly as we can.
Yeah, these stories that we mentioned before, they can also be called subconscious beliefs, or they can be called programs in our bio avatar. They are often picked up from the culture, from the parents, and they often have this scarcity and lack built into them. And when we look at these, when we really look at these, like in meditation, and we can come face to face with these programs, we can see that if I let it be, I will be running around trying to fix this lack programming in the external world. I will do this every day for the rest of my life. Or I could just sit with it and allow this program to melt away, and whatever that dictated will stop being a lack in the external reality. So when we look at it like this, it makes sense to spend some time on the inner work, like you say, because the external chasing of trying to fix the lack, it's just like a perpetual program that will never stop, because it's rather the lack is built into it. So it's the lack and the strategy we have to fix it. So it's a lack and strategy to fix it. Lack and strategy, lack and strategy, lack and strategy, until we solve it. So it's not like you can fix it one time in the external world, because it still exists. So you have to do it again and again and again and again and again. Any reflections on that?
Well, I like what you said, using your words. I think you said sit with it. So instead of chasing it and trying to fix financial limitations and problems. There may be practical things you need to do, but it's not something that you want to chase from the disposition of lack. It's something that you want to sit with it. Those are your words. You want to sit with it and let it dissolve. That's not easy to do. That is what you have to do. But to sit with it could mean, not like a Zen temple where you're sitting and facing a wall. It could be that. Well, let's look at that expression, sitting with it. What is it? You're sitting with your circumstance, your problem, stress, anxiety. And when you sit with it, you sit with it in a manner, in a way. And you, to get into that manner or that way, you could practice a meditation method, a mindfulness method. It doesn't matter what it is, but you want to sit with it appropriately. You want to know what it is. So it is your problem, it's your anxiety, it's your failure to attain an optimal, money consciousness. So you need to sit with it and be mindful of it, of what the problem is. And will it dissolve? Well, yeah. I mean, you'll see into what it is, and you'll eventually have to look at yourself, at the one who is sitting, at the one who is considering what it is. And that one is uh, untouchable, immutable. And those are two qualities, by the way, are really attributed to Bitcoin too, because you really can't change Bitcoin, no matter how much the hackers are at it. We know they can hack the exchanges and all the activity around Bitcoin, but you can't hack Bitcoin, and that resembles your true self. And that's why Bitcoin and non-duality are associated. So when we sit with it, we're keeping a proper mindfulness on what it is, which is just our stresses, our conditioning, our stories. And when we do that, we can see through them, and then they can dissolve, and then we have a different worldview, a different perspective, and that should bear on our money consciousness. So instead of spending, I mean, very frankly and simply, instead of spending money on things and experiences to ease our anxiety and our stress and our difficulty with money, we stop spending the money that way. It's not necessary. And that money, that energy then goes elsewhere. It can go into Bitcoin, it can go into education, go into what you really need to do. And that's another question too. What do we really need to do in this life? Not want to do, but need to do. I mean, who knows what they really need to do? And how do we learn what that is? Well, we can sit with it. Same thing. Sit with it mindfully, meditatively, whatever that means to the person who's sitting. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and another Bitcoin meme is the don't trust, verify. And I think this relates also to the process of sitting with it, because all the false stories, all the scarcity and lack programming, they are not true, right? We only think that they are true as long as we believe in them. And they only exist as long as we believe in them. And if we go into our programming, we go into our mind or whatever we say, and we just like don't trust. We don't trust the programming for what it says, but we look at it, like you say. And what we find then, not to spoil the surprise, but what we find is that all the scarcity patterns are not true. So they will just fall away because they don't pass this test of don't trust, verify. And then if we keep going with that, it's like we come down to this root structure that we talked about before. And that's sort of the base layer of your node. And so the people that came in your room and did that initiation, it's like they were helping you remember your original nature. So maybe they were calling your name,
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we come if we keep on doing this process of don't trust, verify. At least that's what it seems like to me so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point to go beyond trust. Trust isn't enough. You have to see directly, what's happening, what your situation is, and all that. But living life, again, you mentioned the root state and the root level of
The I am, you can say, right?
living. And we could, we need to live from the root level of what we are. The words root and radical are related. Radical refers to a root state, a root condition. So ideally, we live from radical reality. Radical reality. I mean, not only is there, I mean, the story of our own self is gone. So I mean, there really isn't even a self. There's just this. So, I mean, all stories go away. Um, God, even the one who verifies is gone. But that's radical non-duality. What we're talking about is more of a functional non-duality. So like we know, so we're dealing with interconnection and getting along better in the world, seeing the world more for what it is. But there is a level of non-duality that consumes the entire world, and there's nothing, there's no one, there's nothing happening. Well, actually, I think that we might be 100 years ahead of time for the before Bitcoin becomes just commonplace universally. Maybe not 100 years, maybe 10 or 20. But there's even going to be a level beyond that where there's no need for Bitcoin. So then people will realize there never was Bitcoin. And I think that's where a lot of I'm gonna go off on a tangent here.
Yes.
There's a lot of news on alien presence. And you've done a podcast on that. You did a podcast where a woman talked about being a walk-on.
True.
And there is a connection even with alien civilizations, because I mean, are they using Bitcoin? We know that they're not using paper money, they're not using coins. But what's their relationship with money? What is money to them? And where we are reverse engineering their technology, what would it be like to reverse engineer their money consciousness? I mean, now we're going beyond Bitcoin. And we're not even, I mean, the world is nowhere near understanding or using Bitcoin. And here we are chatting about what is beyond it and bringing into the alien presence. But that's radical non-duality, and that's radical Bitcoin consciousness too. Because in both of those, there's no one having an experience and nothing happening. And in radical Bitcoin understanding, there's no Bitcoin, there's nothing happening. There's no movement of energy, there's no there's no mining. There ain't nothing happening. Now we can't live from that, right? We can't live from those dispositions. But again, paradox kicks in here. We can know those and even experience those states of nothing is happening. But in the meanwhile, we're still paying our taxes and going to work and doing, showing up for podcasts at 10:30 or whatever. So that seems to be the nature of a non-dual existence, that paradox.
Yeah, I don't know about these alien races. It's I've been researching for many years, but what I often find with the alien races is that they are living in power structures. So they are not sovereign. Like you don't often find an alien that is like a sovereign alien that has its own spaceship and he goes around. So they always follow orders. If they are dark aliens or if they are light aliens often like adore their president and they just follow commands. And the dark ones, they are afraid of their leaders, so they just follow commands. So I think we are doing something quite unique here on Earth.
Yeah, as far as the alien civilizations, I think there are many, from what I understand, there are different civilizations. They could have different motives, and some of them might be dark, some might be light, and some might follow orders. But yeah, you're right. I'm not sure of any kind of independent loner aliens out there. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes the light aliens, if they like in channeled books and so on. So they talk about the new age as they will bring in the light government, like we need then these enlightened beings to be setting rules for us and so on. And as a Bitcoiner, I'm not so attractive to that scenario. And they are lining out like, yeah, then you have
But
the lower angels, they will be like doing the administration, and And if you look at the dark, it's also a lot of control. Like if they could take over the world, like yeah, they already have control of the world, but it looks like this. Like it's like what we're living through now is just look sort of a dark alien control from my current perspective. And then the light aliens, they want to change it with their power structures. So I'm not so impressed many times when I read those channelings of love and light. I don't know if you have any experiences with that.
Well, I've read lots of, I started reading Madame Blavatsky when I was like 16 years old. I got into a lot of that New Age stuff, Alice Bailey, all of her stuff. And some people say she actually kind of started the New Age. And her work was very hierarchical. She was basically favored. She was very anti-Semitic. So a lot of the New Age is dark, but it also can give you kind of pushes toward the light. But what we're talking about here is spirituality. But any push toward the light is eventually could be a push toward non-duality, which is beyond light and dark. So I think a lot of people who are into non-duality may have started by studying kind of traditional spirituality, including New Age teachings. There's some good stuff in the New Age. But I do like what you say that I never really saw aliens that way as being, as being dark and wanting to take over and control. But certainly that's an element of it. I don't know if we fully understand the alien presence, and some of it seems to be very open-minded. I mean, they communicate possible dangers to the world if we don't handle technology properly. So that can kind of be looked at as favorable towards Bitcoin because they do tell us that if we don't use technology appropriately, that basically we're going to destroy the world. And that's certainly a message from some aliens. And that message would support Bitcoin, I believe. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, to me, it seems that some alien races are just playing in the duality. Like it's light versus dark. So if we have light aliens, we need to have dark aliens to sort of balance out that. So in some levels of existence, I think this is what's going on. It's just like two extremes. So the light ones are not complete. They are just seeing their frequency. They are living in one reality, and they're sort of can't see others, and so they judge. But then I do think that we also have aliens that are beyond that, that are non-dual. So that's just one of my stories that I've been having for some time now, that I've been categorizing alien groups as service to others, which is light. They're like giving, and then service to self, they are dark, they're selfish. And then you have these beings that have moved past that stage in evolution, and they have embraced both the dark and the light.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. As above, so below. As below, so above. So yeah, they're no different than us in some ways, and that makes sense. But I don't know. I mean, how much of a tangent is it really to start talking about aliens when we're trying to stick to non-duality and Bitcoin? But I think it shows that those topics, that even just Bitcoin alone, can bring in um, almost any topic you want to talk about. You'll find a resonance with Bitcoin. That may be the case.
Yeah, that's how we started. We talked about other types of money consciousness, and alien environments deal with money, because if they live in abundance, how are they then handling money? If it's just like a symbolic gift between people, because if everyone have everything they need, maybe it's just more similar like love. So like you get something and you give love back, and maybe they have money more connected to love. So you have this unlimited source of unconditional love, and everyone has this. So you don't need to really give, but still giving is something we like to do, maybe. And we can just give a little bit more to their abundance already. I don't know
Hmm.
how it works.
Interesting to bring up unconditional love, because I was using the word non-conceptual love in some writing I did, um, and that's kind of a non-dual type of love. You know, if you want to use the word love, you can use the word God or truth or all those things, consciousness, awareness, or even the word this. Um, so again, when we're talking about non-duality in its highest way, we would talk. It's non-conceptual, and we can talk about non-conceptual lovers, but I don't know if anyone ever had one. But and how about non-conceptual Bitcoin? I mean, is that what's that about, or does that exist? You know, there's certainly concepts around Bitcoin. There have to be. There's concepts around non-duality. I mean, you can't talk about non-duality without concepts. Even non-conceptuality is a concept. I don't know if you could do that with Bitcoin. Could you?
So it's one meme is Bitcoin is just that Bitcoin is. And I guess that's non-dualistic Bitcoin in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And non-conceptual Bitcoin. It just brings me back to what you said before. It's like the stories are never true, right? We just use the stories to like to communicate and to create experiences. And similar for Bitcoin, it just is. And then people find it interesting to create concepts around it, but they are not really necessary. It's already created, it's already is. But
Mm-hmm.
we are here to have an interesting experience. So everyone is just doing what they feel they have to, or they do what they love. And we are brought together because we found attraction in Bitcoin, right? And I think for both of us, it's connected with some kind of love. You know, we don't do this out of duty, right? We don't do this because we think we have to, but it has spurred some hope and love, connectedness, and then to be able to communicate this with others, we need to come up with some concepts like we're doing here at this very moment.
Yeah, yeah. These are yeah. You got to use concepts. And again, talking about love or truth or consciousness, we can go back to that I am thing. You know, Michael Saylor, who we all know, one of the great speakers and even owners of Bitcoin, has said that Bitcoin stores your life energy. And that's not easy to understand, but I've come to see that Bitcoin stores the I am. You know, if you identify with your I am, you might find that Bitcoin is a storehouse of the I am. So Bitcoin is very much like the I am. But again, I'm just claiming that, I'm confessing it. People have to see that for themselves. And just going off on another tangent, one of my favorite teachers is an architect by the name of Christopher Alexander. He taught at Berkeley for many years, and he had a theory that every component of architecture has the I am within it. So when he designs something, he looks for what he calls the I. I'm calling it the I am. He says every element of architecture of a building, from its largest components to its to some element of its doorknob, to its smallest components, they each have to carry or store the I am, the truth of a person. He calls a living center. So this is something I'd like to write about, but I would say that Bitcoin is a living center within all financial cultures. Maybe one of the only living centers, but it stores I am energy. And I am energy is at the center of any living being. And a living being is something that's, you can feel it in Bitcoin. It's alive. It's interconnected. It's undefinable. There's no center to it. It's that alive. When something is so alive that it has no center, I mean, how alive is that? It's everything. It's the aliveness of everything. So there I was just trying to connect again the I am with architecture, which a little far-fetched, and then back to Bitcoin. But hey, it just shows that everything's interconnected. You can look at architecture, you look at any field you want. Wherever you look is a doorway to non-dual understanding. And when you have that understanding, you can really see it pretty strongly in Bitcoin and in other living centers, wherever you look. Often they're located in architecture or other works of art, but they're within your own self. You want to find the living centers within your own self. So I don't know. I think we've kind of run the gamut from New Age to spirituality to some non-duality that transcends spirituality. What does that leave us with?
Yeah, I think the only thing standing in the way between Bitcoiners and realizing that power of I am energy in Bitcoin is the stories of lack and scarcity that we brought from the lower consciousness. That's sort of what separates us from truly tapping into the potential of Bitcoin. So when we get this, when we get that Bitcoin is part of us, that we can have a personal relationship with Bitcoin, and like how we feel towards Bitcoin is what's manifesting in our physical reality. And if we feel that we have to work very hard to get Bitcoin, then that's what will play out. If we feel that Bitcoin is a very giving being and he just wants us to be our true self and just spend our days doing what we love. And that's, I think, is our sort of normal state. But the lack and scarcity programming is disturbing that from taking place at this time. So we need sort of a time span of maybe 100 years or so for a larger group of humans to understand this and to have the guts to look at the scarcity lack programming, sit with it, and embrace Bitcoin not only externally but internally, so that it can manifest as this I am presence for. And if this happens for a few thousand people, then maybe it will catch on.
Yeah, well, it will. But like you said, it takes time. That was beautifully stated, by the way. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. And again, the cornerstone of a lot of this understanding is pursue both Bitcoin by studying it and pursue non-duality, pursue your own true nature. And that's just done by, whatever your path is. I mean, it could be meditation, it may not be meditation. You got to find out the person has to find out what their true path is. And the only way you can do that, or one way to do that, just expose yourself to everything. Just, the word non-duality is like a red pill, right? In the movie The Matrix, the red pill opened you up to your true nature. And the word non-duality is like a red pill. You just let a search engine swallow it. And what's going to open up is going to be an entire world of possibilities for your self-realization. And it's just something you have to start pursuing if somebody wants to do that. And it does, it will, create an opening in the scarcity mindset. And open you up to a more of an abundance mindset. Yeah, so this is something someone can do. Start pursuing non-duality, find out how to do it, and keep studying Bitcoin, and buy some Bitcoin or invest in it somehow. And it's a good journey. That's a good path.
A funny story around how I found you was that the last edition of Citadel 21, I wrote an article called Bitcoin is non-dualistic.
Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't see that.
And then I was supposed to send it to someone, and then I was just searching Citadel 21, non-duality, and then your article showed up instead of mine.
Oh, well, look, you should still publish it because I want to do more writing. I have done more writing on non-duality and Bitcoin. No one's doing it. It's a niche that, according to my search online, like nobody's writing about it. I wrote an article and you wrote something. And so I encourage you to keep writing and let's keep connecting because look, non-duality is still little known in the world. It's somewhat in the mainstream, but that's still relatively little known. And that's after 25 years of promoting non-duality, the word non-duality. So Bitcoin will take time too, take a long time. But we got to keep talking about it if you're interested in writing about it. So I hope you'll do some more writing about it because we do see things. At some point we see things the same, but we diverge too. We see things differently. Like you kind of shared that your feeling or your insights into aliens, and that that kind of opened me to that in a new way. I hadn't really seen it the way you do. So yeah, an entire non-duality and Bitcoin community could easily open up, but maybe it's up to two of us to push it. I appreciate that you're inviting me on your show to talk about it.
Yeah, was it anything else you were hoping to discuss today when you prepared maybe
I mean, look,
mentally?
there's a lot more we could talk about. We could have talked about anti-fragility of non-duality and in Bitcoin. We could have talked about more about decentralization because there's no center to non-duality. There's no center. I mean, Bitcoin is decentralized in financial respect, but yeah, we can. I'm going to
Yeah,
do some more writing on it. You should do some more writing on it, and let's keep promoting this issue.
yeah. Yeah, decentralization has been, I think that's the main feature of Bitcoin that I like.
Yeah, it's powerful.
But I think that's sort of a signature of the consciousness that humanity are moving towards, and the centralization is the hallmark of the suffering consciousness.
Exactly. I have a quote here from Andreas Antonopoulos, who we all know, one of the great early teachers on Bitcoin and writers. Everyone should access his material. And a quote from him is, he says, there is no center to the Bitcoin network, no central authority, no concentration of power, and no actor in whom complete trust must be vested. Again, that word trust. You don't need trust. There's no center to it. All that bears on non-duality. There's no center to these teachings of non-duality. There are teachers, there are teachings, there are traditions, but there's no center to it all. There's no central authority. There's no guy or woman who's the central authority on non-duality culture. There's no real there's no concentration of power in non-duality. Probably is a little, but no one takes it seriously. And there's no actor within non-duality or Bitcoin in whom you must place your complete trust. I mean, that would be ridiculous. So those are strong parallels between the decentralization of Bitcoin and the culture of non-duality.
Yeah, I really liked what you said about Bitcoin being that thunderous voice, and that the Bitcoiners are sort of amplifying that in society today. It's
that's probably.
it's like an initiation, you could say. Bitcoin is like an initiation for humanity. If we take that parallel to
It
your,
could be. I'm sure many people who have gotten into it and studied it and have had this sudden thunderous realization that, wait a minute here, there's something here that's evolutionary. There's something that's almost like the monolith in the movie 2001. It's there, and it's going to promote a healthy evolution of humanity in this, not just in financial circles, but just overall. Overall, Bitcoin promotes interconnectedness as a whole, and the decentralization of Bitcoin aligns with non-duality, non-dual consciousness. And both non-dual consciousness and Bitcoin challenge this whole separation thing, this whole illusion of separation. So, mindfulness in the context of Bitcoin really can transform a person's understanding of money. There's a lot going on here.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would be happy to continue talking with you about this in a while again. Let's see where.
In a while, yeah. Let's our understandings and our way of communicating this will certainly change, and let's see what happens. But I really appreciate your interest in this. I'm glad. I didn't know you wrote on non-duality and Bitcoin, and I'd like to see your writing, and it'd be great.
Yeah, I can send it to you. Sure.
Yeah, please do.
And I can include both of our articles in the description of this podcast, together with your Twitter link, and also maybe to your website. And you have some books there, right?
Yeah, all my links can be found at nonduality.com.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my links to Twitter, Facebook, and my non-duality group is which has been around for 25 years.
How many people do you have there?
Oh, I don't know. There's probably several thousand, but maybe there's 100 or 200 that are active. Yeah, so people are invited to join that. And I have free books, and I need to write a book on Bitcoin and non-duality. That's what I'm going to work on. And maybe we can talk. But I hope to hear more from you. And I look forward to your future podcasts with different interesting people. And I thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. I really enjoyed talking with you.
You're welcome.